जय श्री राधे, श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय। सब वैष्णवों को सादर और सप्रेम जय श्री कृष्ण। Continuing with Varta number 98, the story of Ajab Bhai. Day 123. Ajab Bhai heard this and supplicated Sri Gosaiji to please grant her this initiation. Sri Gosaiji gave her the Brahma Sambandh when all the necessary rules had been observed, and then taught her all about Seva within the path of grace. She then urged him to stay a further 4 days with her. She served him very nicely, and Ajab Bhai facilitated many excellent cooked preparations. When the time came for Sri Gosaiji to get ready to leave, she immediately began to suffer the pain of separation from him. So much so that she was on the point of death. One female disciple ran to Sri Gosaiji and called out, "Oh Maharaj, Ajab is on the point of death." Hearing this, Sri Gosaiji arrived there. She touched his feet and then came back to normal. She pleaded, "Oh Maharaj, I cannot live without seeing you. I cannot survive." Sri Gosaiji gave her a pair of his wooden sandals and instructed, "Whenever you feel pain of separation, you should look at these. You will see me in them. Serve these sandals in the same way that you serve me." After teaching her in this way, he departed. She made a large donation to him before he travelled to Gujarat. She began to serve the sandals and did all the seva duties most lovingly, according to the rules of the path of grace. The sandals began to grant her divine experience, and Sri Gosaiji spoke to her through them. When she could not see him, she felt great longing for him. She would open the curtains where the sandals were and see Sri Gosaiji sitting there. He was seated with his book and was giving divine discourse. After some time, through Sri Gosaiji's grace, Sri Govardhanaji himself began to grant her his experience. He would chat with her and play chopar with her. He would talk and laugh with her. He would also let her have his holy sight. But on the occasion when he did not, she would neither eat nor drink and would lie around listlessly. When he came back in sight, she would enjoy seeing him, and she was always preparing lovely new offerings for him. Bhav Prakash. This story reveals that when the devotee recognizes the Guru to be divine, then the Lord stays close to them and becomes attached to that devotee. Part 2. Once Sri Govardhanaji was detained at one Vaishnava's house and could not get to Ajab Kumari's place on time. He arrived after the lunchtime arati the next day. She was very distressed. Srinathji played and laughed with her and ate what she offered to him. He was about to leave again when she piped up, "I will not let you leave." The beloved Lord said, "I have to go. For as long as Sri Gosaiji is here on this earth, I have to come and go to my temple. However, after that I shall come and live for a long time in your home in Simhad. I shall stay there and nowhere else. I shall be famous whilst in that place, and lots of people will come to have my holy sight there." Ajab Kumari said, "How can I believe you? You have so many devotees. How can I rely on these words of yours?" Sri Govardhanaji replied, "I am telling you the truth. This is my promise to you. There is no doubt about it. Now do not worry. I shall let you see me all the time." Having said this, he left. Whenever Sri Gosaiji settled him down for rest and closed the curtains during the seva, he would come to see Ajab Kumari. Bhav Prakash. The moral of this story is that the Lord cannot bear to see his devotees suffering. Wherever there is a devotee who feels the pain of separation from him and worships him in this way, he depends on such devotees and stays close to them always. This path of grace is all about pangs of separation and great longing to meet with him. Thus Sri Govardhanaji always remains close to such devotees. When Sri Govardhanath saw the depth of Ajab Kumari longing for him, he left Vraja and came to Mewar, Rajasthan. Sri Govardhanaji will stay in Mewar, Srinathdwara, for as long as Ajab Kumari Bai is situated there in her divine form of perfect grace-filled devotion. Thus concludes Varta 98, the story of Ajab Kumari Bai, who was an accomplished Vaishnav and a recipient of the path of the great grace of Sri Gosaiji. Continuing now with Varta 99, the story of one Brahmin Pandit from Gujarat who used his sacred thread to tie up a broom. Bhav Prakash. He is a devotee of Tamasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Aturi, who is very keen to serve the beloved Lord. Day or night, she is fixed on her seva. She knows no desires to know nothing else. She manifests from Subhag and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. Here on earth she appears as a Brahmin in a village in Gujarat. In his childhood he had the association of a pundit who followed the path of rites and rituals. He read many of the texts of that path and engaged in such religious ceremonies. His parents died when he was 25. He lived alone and did not marry. Once when Sri Gosaiji was travelling to Dwarka, he arrived in that Brahmin's village and set up camp there. The Brahmin had his sight and could only recognize him to be some wise and learned man. He wanted to debate the scriptures with him, so he approached Sri Gosaiji with this purpose in mind. He came to him and paid his respects, and asked, "O Maharaj, which is greater, the path of action or the path of knowledge?" "Karma marga ya jnana marga." Sri Gosaiji replied, "Of these the better is the path which you find more interesting and pleasing. Better for you is the path in which you have faith. The best path is, however, the path of devotion through which the embodied soul finds perfect satisfaction and fulfillment. In this age of Kali, to follow the oaths of either knowledge or ritual is very difficult and fraught with impediments and trouble." The Brahmin Pandit further inquired, "But there must be some necessary ritual in the path of devotion?" Sri Gosaiji replied, "In the path of devotion, both ritual, action and knowledge are included. However, they are all related to the Divine Beloved Lord. Whatever action is undertaken in the path of devotion, it is done without expectation of reward, and performed with love and surrender. Therefore, their action and knowledge are but one limb of devotion. They are undertaken solely with the purpose of increasing one's love and devotion. In the path of action, all works are performed with the underlying desire for heavenly rewards. Selflessness is not found there. Their performance is fraught with difficulty. In this age of struggle, their perfect performance is next to totally impossible. Therefore, the performer's heart and mind are never really joyous. They thus only bring conflict." The Brahmin Pandit piped up, "What are the actions to be performed within the path of devotion?" Sri Gosaiji replied, "Listen, O Brahmin, in the path of devotion the main thing is to surrender to and refuge in Sri Krishna. Therefore the embodied soul on the devotional path lives within the shelter of the Lord. He himself taught the glory of the path of surrender in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ji. The embodied soul on the path of devotion performs all their duties which relate to their bodily necessities and their worldly and scriptural obligations by first selflessly offering them all up to their beloved Lord with no desire for the results thereof, and then simply serve him. Action that is performed as a selfless offering to the Lord is in itself divine, and devotion grows from it. An embodied soul's life is full when they have behaved in this way. This is the path of devotion." Hearing this, the Pandit Brahmin supplicated Sri Gosaiji, "O Maharaj, until today I was just killing myself in the path of action. I got nothing in return. Please now accept me into the path of devotion." Sri Gosaiji told the Brahmin to go and bathe, that he would then initiate him with the Lord's name. "Tomorrow, after you have fasted, I shall also initiate you with Brahma Sambandh." The Brahmin bathed and came back, and then Sri Gosaiji initiated him with the Lord's name. He went home. The next day he fasted. He then bathed into a state of purity and came to Sri Gosaiji, who blessed him by initiating him with Brahma Sambandh. The Brahmin supplicated, "Please permit me to serve one Sri Thakurji. Please teach me all the ways of Seva." Sri Gosaiji granted him the Seva of one child Krishna Swarupa and taught the Brahmin Pandit everything he needed to know about Seva. Then the Brahmin took Sri Gosaiji's permission to take the Sri Thakurji home with him. He cleaned and purified his whole house and began to serve the Lord. Part 1. The Brahmin lived by begging for supplies. He would then bathe, cook and complete all the Lord's Seva from Mangala to Sri Thakurji's nighttime rest. He did this Seva every day. One day he went out to beg for supplies and it got late. When he reached home, he was very anxious to get into his seva and quickly bathed and swept the temple. While he was doing so, the handle of the broom broke. He pulled off his sacred thread and bound the handle with it to mend it. He did not even have a second thought about doing this with his sacred thread. He then awoke Sri Thakurji, who was very pleased with him. The Brahmin asked his lord, "O Maharaj, you seem very happy today. What is the reason for this?" He replied, "O Brahmin, today you broke your sacred thread in order to repair the broom and were very anxious to wake me up. I am so happy to see this." From this day on, Sri Thakurji began to let him experience his direct presence and ask for whatever he wanted. The Brahmin was always motivated and inspired towards his seva. Bhav Prakash. The moral of this story is that devotion within the path of grace is characterized by pangs of separation and agitated restlessness until the seva is properly done. Without such eagerness to serve the Lord does not grant his experience. Why? Because when these divine sentiments are present, then all worldly and scriptural considerations are forgotten. Even one's bodily needs are forgotten. The Lord can then take up residence in the devotee's heart, and they then experience the nectar of divine love. Thus concludes Varta. 99. The story of the Brahmin Pandit from Gujarat, who was an accomplished Vaishnava and the recipient of the Sri Gosaiji's great grace, and to whose tale there is truly no end. Wah, aaj ke anand ki jai ho, sab Vaishnavan ko jai Shri Krishna, Shri Gosaiji ki jai, Shri Vallabhadish ki jai, aaj ke anand ki jai, jai jai, Shri Radhe.